As mentioned, this meeting is being recorded. Also, this is a public meeting, so we do have public in attendance, but probably not going to be soliciting much public comment today because this is a council retreat, and I do want to kind of keep the conversation amongst ourselves. So I guess we'll get started. So this is not the format that I was looking for today. You know, we had quite a bit of time set aside. I wanted to really work on some team building and really work on our mission and the way well, team building really. But that is going to be it's not quite the same in this format. So I'll do the best I can to kind of keep that flavor. The big thing here is that I want to revisit our goals from our last meeting, our last retreat. Take a look at how we've done, see if we need to, what refinement we can do, reevaluate what we were looking for as far as long range planning, see if something else has come to light. But mainly is look at the goals that we have set and make sure that they are as succinct and to the point as possible, because we are on purpose. We're down one manager and we have a green public works staff. So want to make this as easy as on the staff as possible to move forward and achieve these goals that we're setting up for today. But to get started, I want to go around the room and have each of you tell us how you ended up on this meeting. So start from the beginning, how you ended up in Stevenson, how you ended up at the city, and how you ended up in your position. So I'll go first. I moved here in 2005 from San Diego. First thought was cute little town, but not very cosmopolitan. And that's actually one of my quotes that my wife loves to make fun of me for. Quickly realized that this was a pretty cool place to be. I realized that if Jacob was up to no good, that the phone call was going to beat him home. So I decided that because the idea was that we were going to stay here long enough with friends until we found a place closer to Jen's work out in Portland. Decided to stay. Started my own business here, ABC Computing, and then decided at one point that I thought it would be pretty cool to be the mayor of this cute little town. So doubled down on all of my responsibilities. So joined the Business Association, was president of that organization for many years. Part of that was being on the Chamber of Commerce, was president twice with that. Joined the Planning Commission, had a brief stint as city council, and this is my third year as mayor. So that's how I ended up here in this spot. So I'm just gonna go around the screen here. Liana.
Sorry. So let's see. My parents windsurfed. So when we grew up in Northern California and Eastern Washington, once we moved to Eastern Washington, they came to the Gorge every single weekend. And so when they found the opportunity to move here, they did. And I was away at college, but I joined the Peace Corps after college. And when I came back, made the Gorge my home, living in White Salmon and Bingen for a little bit. I was in the private sector, so I worked for In Situ for a number of years. And then I was on the city council for the city of White Salmon for a few years as well, and then resigned just because I moved outside the city limits to the city of Bingen. And then when a position opened up, they asked me to join as the clerk treasurer for White Salmon, so I did. I was there for a number of years, and then when I was able to do my master's program while working as well at the city of White Salmon, and with the goal of moving up, eventually being a city administrator or working for a larger city. And so then when the opportunity came up again for the city of Stevenson, I jumped on it. I had, in that transition though, in that period of time between when Nick had the position, when it first came up, I was interested in it, but again, I wanted to get my master's first and do a couple of things. Me and my husband moved to Stevenson, so it was a nice close position. Definitely lessened my commute, but then also my when I applied for the position, I had just had my son, so it was kind of a transition time all around, learning how to be a mom and then navigate a new career. But it's been amazing ever since.
Thank you. Next up on my Brady Bunch here is Ben.
So I came to Stevenson in 2008, immediately out of grad school. Before grad school, I had worked for City of Vernonia in Oregon. It's a little bit bigger than Stevenson, but seemed a lot smaller, kind of tucked out of the way. That was an AmeriCorps position there, helping all around in their planning department. And that experience really gave me the confidence to see that even, you know, there I hadn't gone to grad school yet, but was able to help that community and really bring about some good things there. So finished grad school, had connections still in the Portland area, and so was looking for a career out here. Found it in Stevenson, so it's been good to me since then. Mary Ann Duncan Cole was the city administrator at that time, and she was a really good mentor for me. So transitioned from that to Nick, and that was very challenging to do some things. I think you guys are still seeing some of the fallout from those challenges, but Liana came on 3 years ago, and it's been really good since then. One of the things that I really like about my role is empowering people, empowering the community. So seeing Scott and Matthew and Paul here, all as former planning commission members, really gives me pride. And happy to have these conversations and work together to move forward.
Thanks, Ben. And now Paul.
Well, sure. Let's see. I spent 6 years I grew up in Oklahoma and spent 6 years in the Navy, and slowly moved north from San Diego after I was discharged, and ended up in graduate school in Portland. About the time I finished grad school, I met my wife, who was living here in Stevenson. She works for the Pacific Crest Trail Association. And I thought, well, I'll just move out to Stevenson. What do I have to lose? And it's been a good experience for me. I met Ben not long after moving here, which was in about 2010 or so. And he encouraged me to join the Planning Commission, which I did for several years. And then I got the opportunity to join the City Council, and I took it. And I really enjoy the idea that I can help mold the future of such a wonderful community. And I look forward to working with everyone and progressing forward.
Thank you very much. Carl.
You're on mute.
Okay, I'm here now. Thanks, Robert. My family moved out here in '77 with the building of the second powerhouse. Spent preschool through 12th grade in the school system here. Graduated, went to work at a steel fabrication shop. Started out as a sandblaster. I was there for 12 years. When I left there, I was a purchasing agent and also in the procurement management of buildings of cranes. So left there, went to work for the city of Washougal, did a stint there for a couple of years, got an offer for the city of Stevenson, and I took it. Did some moonlighting in between there, plumber, did some concrete work, a little bit of everything in between, but ended up at the city of Stevenson. Totally by my choice. I was hoping something would come up in my hometown, and it did. So I'd like to think I kind of wished that one to happen, and it did. So ended up being a good move. Really like it here. Really like the team I work with.
Thank you very much. Matthew, you're next.
So I spent most of my life outside of Oregon City in the rural area out there in Redland. when was married for a couple years, and we were house hunting and driven through Stevenson before. Absolutely loved it. Thought, oh, maybe our next house we'll be able to move here. But then the Redfin pinged us and said, oh, there's something that matched your parameters. And so wound up moving here during the 2017 snowstorms, between storms. Scraped the driveway, got the truck in before it dumped again. Yeah, I mean, I loved the small town feel. It's what I grew up with. And so I had an opportunity to get on planning commission, did that for a while, really enjoyed it, wanted to get more involved with the community. And then shortly thereafter, an opening on the council came available, and jumped at the opportunity for that. I was really excited to have more of an impact. And I knew there was differing opinions on the direction of where the city would go, and I really wanted to get in on that conversation. So here I am.
Thank you so much. Robert?
Grew up in Houston, Texas, 7.5 million people. So figured small town would be a lot better than living in 7.5 million people. Now, let's see, Aiden was graduating kindergarten at private Catholic school in Portland. Logan had just finished 5th grade, so we were in Hood River and sort of celebrating graduating through 5th grade. We stopped in Cascade Locks on the way back because I wanted to see who was building homes in Cascade Locks and why. There was a realtor had an open house there, and when we went in and looked at the house, she said, if you're interested in the gorge, you got to go across the bridge. There's this house up on this street. It's been for sale for about a year. You got to check it out. So we actually came across the bridge, drove up to the house, liked it, and I remember Chelsea, she opened the front door and it was open. So I was like, well, I guess we own the house. She said, go up and pick it out. So a year later, Chris Ford was coming off of city council, and people said, if you want to get involved, get involved. So I got on back in 2009, and been here ever since.
Thank you. Amy?
Thank you. Sometimes I have to remind myself to listen instead of figure out what I want to say. So I've been actively listening. So give me just a minute. Let's see, we moved here in 91, actually, and we came for the windsurfing, like Liana's parents. We left. We were here for about 6 months. We moved to Park City, Utah for the skiing, and then went to grad school and got real jobs, and it took us a little while to get back. We knew that we wanted to come back, and we came back in 96. And bought a house when Marina was born, which was in 97. And then I just felt like I couldn't raise a child in a community that was, I felt like it was missing a lot of things that I wanted for my kids. And I realized that the only way to make those things happen was to actually make those things happen. It's kind of sucky sometimes that you're the one who realizes that you have to stand up and actually do shit, So I did. I worked with friends to build a playground, and I became the president of the chamber, and I, did a lot of stuff. And then I decided to run for county commissioner because I didn't like the way things were happening at the county level. And I lost to JR. But I won really handily in Stevenson, and a number of people after that encouraged me to run for council. So I did. That was the same year that Robert came on board. So I wouldn't have known the year, but now that he said 2009, I guess that's when it was. And I have stayed really for the same reasons, because it's fun to work with people on building something, on visioning. So that's what I most enjoy, and that's what I most appreciate. Thanks.
Thank you. Annie?
Okay, so hi everybody. I first moved here in 2009 and stayed for a year and a half while I was house sitting for an old farm on Nelson Creek Road while the owner was away. And then I left and pursued a relationship with my now husband. And 4 years ago, when we were given the opportunity to pick anywhere we wanted to live and go make a home there, my first and only choice was to come back to Stevenson, because I received such a warm welcome and had kept those contacts, those relationships that I had made back in 2009 through 2011, and just knew that I wanted to be back in this space, because it was just, it was one big long hug those first 2 years while I was here. So in 2016, we returned, we bought a home to make sure we stayed. And the house that we have is actually a house that I used to admire when I lived here the first time and thought, oh, one day I'm going to live in that house. And the day we came here looking for a home to buy, the realtor was pounding the sign in the yard, declaring that it was for sale. So we didn't waste any time. We made an offer right away, and here we are. The reason I joined or decided to run for city council was, one, I was solicited. I was asked to by several people that I know and admire, and they stated that they needed to see some change, and I had noticed that as well, both at the city level and the county level. And like everyone else, the only way you can make change is to be part of it. And I think that being on council and having a voice and a vote are critically important to making certain that change does occur. And I think that this is a very strong council. I'm glad to be a part of it, and I'm very excited to see where we decide to take it. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I learned some things about some of you that I didn't know, so I'm glad we took a moment to go around the room and share our history. Before I dive too far into the last set of goals, I also want to go around the room and have you each take however long you need to talk about. When I wanted to be the mayor, I said my goal was to try and keep forward thinking, look forward, never keep your head down, always look forward, plan like you knew that it was going to happen or that you hoped that it would. So that's the sort of discussion, the type of topics that I want, that I hope that I can get from you, pull out of you guys on this next go around. Where would you like to see the city go as you look forward? Not just 5 years, 10 years, even the think big 30 years. What sorts of things are on your mind? What is your idea of forward thinking, positive change? And while you're noodling on that, we can either do it at the same time or circle back around. Also kind of dive into what you think the hurdles are. If you have a vision or something that you would like to see as sort of a goal, then what do you think the hurdles are? So, and I'm not, so like again, we might do that at the same time, or maybe once you've had a moment to think about your goals, we can circle back. But the way I like to look at it is, it's really easy to find yourself staring at the paper and have blinders on, and all you can see is what's going on directly in front of you. It's very, very important that you pick up your head and look up and see what's coming down at what's coming at you, and then also try to pick a path. You know, if you find yourself at a crossroads, at a trailhead, you know, if you've got two directions you can go, the idea is that you've already thought about where you want to go, and it'll be an easy trail to pick because you've already thought about it. So those are the types of things that I want to try to explore this go around. So I'll go first again, unless somebody wants to dive in ahead of me. The one thing that has come up a lot is, what are we going to do next? There's lots of hand wringing on, we don't have lumber, we can't get back in the forest, what are we going to do, what are we going to do? And there's a lot of hands out. How is the federal government going to make sure that we are successful? So for me, how is the city going to make sure that we are successful? How are we going to find a way to be the best that we can be and not be so dependent on something that's out of our control? So what is the best way that we can establish a foundation to move forward? And I've been beating this drum ever since I was fortunate enough to go through the RDI leadership training. There's the Tupelo model. And Liana, can you give me or maybe I can share. There we go. Let me find my document here. Can you guys see that? There we go. The Tupelo model is the idea that economic development is at the the last thing that you get to. You need a foundation to hold it all up. And at the very, very bottom of it, the one that's the most important part is the human development. And that was something that I leaned on heavily at the last retreat. And it's something that I keep reminding myself the importance of. And then the leadership and the organizational, this is when we talked about it in our class, this is ways to build up the next set of leaders, like the leaders that we have in the room today. Leadership and organizational development, train your leaders, but then also send them out into the different organizations. And those organizations have very, very different faces all the way around, whether it's working at the food bank or helping with housing or helping at domestic violence, Chamber of Commerce, joining the city council. Then you get to community development, and then on to economic development. So this is why when we looked at ways for Ben to help out, it was community development. That was important for us at the time to really focus on that. But the part that I really wanted to focus on is the human development. We have a lot of worker bees that support the right now business, tourism. Tourism is not the end all be all. It's not, well, okay, I can't say it's not sustainable. There's lots of towns that have made a pretty good living on tourism. Think of places like Leavenworth. So it can be done. I don't think that that's the direction that that we need to stay on. It's right now, but we need to find something and find the next thing. The problem is that the magic ball, the crystal ball, hasn't been very forthcoming on what that next thing is going to be. So the most important part is to make sure that we're ready whenever it happens. So working with the school to find ways to increase the skill sets that they're graduating with. Also finding ways to increase housing that the worker bee that's making tourism possible, giving them a chance to live close to work so that they could even walk if they had to. Also making sure that our community is ready for when the next business comes. It's been proven over and over again. You can't throw out a big spotlight, the bat signal, and expect businesses to come. When they come to visit, they have to understand that you are ready for them, that you have been waiting and you're willing, and your community is ready for them to come into your town. 30 years or looking ahead, we are stuck with some pretty hard geographical boundaries. We also have some political boundaries with the Scenic Act. So we don't have a lot of growth options. It's a hard options. There are hard boundaries. There's no getting around it. Now, in amongst that area is some county land that could be annexed by the city. So finding a way, keeping your head up, looking ahead, what parts of the county where would we like to grow next and why, and what the hurdles are. So for example, some of our growth is hampered right now by by water. We have water, but it's just not there. So building another site for a tower, a tank for water, that's a lot of money. And that is putting a lot of money into, I think it's going to go this direction. And it's petrifying to think that we would build some infrastructure and the dice were rolled wrong. This is not the way it went. Something organic could happen where somebody will go, ooh, this is even better. Now where are you going to get my water? How come I can't have that water? So that's one of the hurdles I worry about, is trying to balance where would we want to go, but then making sure that we also take into account what that's going to mean in planning correctly. Like I said, that's a big fear for me, is that we commit to infrastructure and it's in the wrong place. So with those areas that we might want to grow into that are county lands now, how do we make sure that the that property is going to be ready for us when it's time for us to pull that trigger. If the county approves some land divisions or does a short plat or does subdivisions and that doesn't match with our plan, then our plan suddenly has a big hole in it. So finding a way to work with the county and I've seen a couple different models on how that can work. So city policies, but administered by the county. And we were kind of seeing a little bit of that now with the building department, but working with the county to find that balance that says, no, you can't do that because we want to do it, but understand that they have goals too. And then finding a way for them, so that for us to get our, to share our goals so that we can move ahead, so that we do have an opportunity, we do have a foundation once the opportunity arises. So those are some big goals. The fire hall is something that it's like, oh yeah, the fire hall. We've trimmed down the committee that's working on that now. Rob kind of threw out an interesting challenge, and at first I was like, yeah, right. He says, hey, there might be some federal money after the virus for infrastructure, for safety. And do you think that we could be shovel ready in time to submit for a grant or for some money from the feds? And I was like, yeah, right. And then I was like, well, why not? Let's give it. We can try. Certainly can try, instead of just dismissing it. So, like I said, got the committee really lean. We got Tom on the fire department, and also as a commissioner that's very enthusiastic and has the time and loves it. So we've already started looking at just kind of dusting off the floor plan, which, as it turns out, hasn't really changed that much. The size of it maybe, but the scope of it, not that much. So hopefully we'll be able to use most of what we've got from Mackenzie. An interesting thing that he brought to the table is, being able to get into a decom room doesn't necessarily mean that you came in off a fire truck. So he said you should put the decon room accessible from an exterior door and from an interior door. And I said, well, that's a fine idea, Tom. So he's already been out and lined out some potential locations on the site where we might put it. And here's the best part about the whole thing is that he drilled down and on the geo report and said, okay, this spot right here is where you have to dig down 9 feet. But this spot over here is only 4 or 5 feet. And this spot over here is actually a little higher than we need it. So we're going to have to dig down anyway. So first off, the first question is, well, how come the engineer didn't do that for us too? Well, that's not what we asked for. So I guess we need to be more succinct on our goals, which is kind of a hard realization. So that's moving forward. The wastewater treatment plant, I have to say, coming into this job, I started going to the meetings ahead of time so I could try to wrap my head around wastewater. I had no idea what the infrastructure is and how a wastewater treatment plant deals with wastewater and how it comes out the other side. No idea. So crash course, it's still a tough nut for me, but watching this all move along, watching the city streamline, watching the amazing things that Carl's been able to make happen down at the treatment plant, and to being able to show the state that we actually do know what we're talking about, and we are making changes and are serious about making this work, and that their money isn't going to be wasted, and to the point where they're not looking over our shoulders as much as they used to, where there's not a lot of heat. But that's because we've done what we're supposed to, and we're moving forward. Water, the water system is going to be coming up next. That is part of a plan, unlike the wastewater plant, where we suddenly realized, oh my gosh, we haven't even thought about this in 40 years, and we're already 20 years behind. Water is a plan that you guys approved last year, Carl? So that does have some timeline, some goals that we do need to tend to, and we have to work. That's going to be the next big thing, is working on the water plant. One more thing that's going to take some time off from, or take time, anytime available from staff. So that's another reason why we're having this meeting, is so that we can be succinct in what we're trying to accomplish. And then looking back through some of the goals that we had previously, some of them felt a little like I kind of put them towards the bottom of the list, but then the more I think about it, you know, leadership development is right there in this model that I just dusted off for you guys. Training and sussing out the next batch of leaders. So partnering with the school district, with finding the next set of leaders and finding some ways to mold them. Mold is a weird word. Help encourage them to be the leaders that they can be to help their community. And then the school is something that really, I'm troubled by the schools for a couple of different reasons. I do think that the school and the school system is a resource in that they are providing the next, if we want workers here, if we want our children to stay here, or maybe, you know, go to school and then come back here, we have to train them in ways that they'll be successful when they are here. So looking ahead, what goals do we have? What do we want for a city, and how do we have our students be ready for those opportunities? That's one thing, you know, whether it's a magnet school, you know, reverse the flow. People are spending money to go out of the district. They're paying out of district money to go to a different school. What do we have to do to make our school be attractive like that? How can we make our school attractive enough that someone in Oregon would want to pay money to send their kids here? Some friends of mine moved to Florida, and their school system is a big funnel for the healthcare industry. So they have a heavy emphasis on medicine, or at least health training in middle school, starting as early as middle school, and obviously a little bit in elementary school. But by the time they graduate from high school, they are ready to walk on as a nurse's aide, and have a very good leg up on becoming certified nurses. Obviously, STEM is big. You know, we've got aeronautics on both sides of us, and that's still a head scratcher why that industry leapfrogged over Stevenson. And there's lots of thoughts on that, but maybe that's the thing that we excuse me, that we need to be ready for is technical training. So STEM, and wait, I just was on a Zoom call with the new superintendent, and I brought up these same concerns. How are we going to turn the tide? And she seems intent on starting with STEM. Again, that's something that has to start at early ages, so that by the time they get to high school, the curriculum will continue to enhance what they've been learning all along. But the future, the new reality of what a school looks like, I've seen some pretty dystopian models on what a schoolroom looks like, with partitions between desks, no field trips, no eating with friends, no cafeteria. So there are a lot of parents that said that is not the memory that I want for my children, and there is a big concern that more students than ever before are going to go to homeschooling. Parents have made the sacrifice to work from home and be part of their children's education online to make that work. They get a chance to spend more time with their kids, to be part of their education and a lot more part of their lives. So they're willing to continue that model because it pleases them. There's been some numbers thrown around that maybe 25% of previous students that used to go to school will stay home. They just don't want, the parents don't want that. They prefer what they've been enjoying up to now, and sending them off to school for something that, for an environment that they're not keen. So, and then also kindergarten. That was one of Karen's biggest concerns, is that why would I send my kid to kindergarten and face this new stark reality? And I also have to temper that with, it was brought up the other day, after being a parent, and you know, one of the great, you know, there's great milestones as a parent when baby first holds up their head, when baby isn't where you left it when you put it down because they crawl away, and then even after that they are even further away because now they're running, and then there's the talking, and then that glorious day that they go to daycare, and there's just a couple of hours for So those, you know, those major milestones, but going to kindergarten is a big deal. Getting the kids out of the house, starting their education, and being able to do some other things while you are away from your kids. That model is looking a little shaky right now because some parents don't really want that reality. But then there's also the fact that there are some kids that it's a very real thing, that getting out of the house and going to school is going to a safe place. They need a chance to get out of their house for a variety of reasons. So having that resource for them to go to. So I guess all this rambling is the school is something that have always kind of struggled with how best to partner and use it as the resource that it can be, but then also as the hurdle. I don't know how that's going to work now. I have no idea. I have a lot of respect for a superintendent that's ready to dive in feet first, and Annie was on that call too. She seems like she's a real go-getter, but I do not envy the position that she's in. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. I'm going to look down through my list here. Broadband, and I bring this up every chance I get. When schools were closed, as an IT guy, when the schools were closed, our business exploded. I need a laptop because I need to connect from home, and please make it possible that I can connect from home. So we were very, very busy making that part happen. So now we have a lot of people working from home. We have kids at home learning virtually. It was, I called it that we crowdsourced stress testing Zoom. Zoom crashed in that first week. They could not spin up servers fast enough to meet all this demand. But it really did a great job of highlighting the shortcomings that we have in our infrastructure for broadband. So as it turns out, Washington has some of the better coverage in America, but looking at a heat map of coverage doesn't do justice to the fact that, especially in rural areas, there are some serious shortcomings. There are students that like the school district has been doing a very fine job of, actually Karen found, I don't know, 25, the first batch of Chromebooks she found. She just went out and got them. Somebody had extra and they gave them to her. It's sweet. So putting Chromebooks in the hands of kids to help learn from home. The problem is there's nothing to connect to. They have to go someplace. Either they go get in the car and sit in the parking lot at Backwoods, or go sit in the car next to the library. So especially in rural areas, and that's one of our challenges that we face here, cute little town, but very rural, and that brings with it a whole unique set of challenges. So Washington State finally has a broadband office, which they haven't had in quite some time. Oregon has had their broadband office, and they're doing amazing things. They're making things happen in Oregon with their broadband. So now we finally have a broadband office, and the state is hemorrhaging cash at an alarming rate on another thing. So not sure where that office is going to get any money and be able to make any kind of a difference, juxtaposed to the fact that it's something that we need to make happen, because this scenario that we're in right now isn't going to change dramatically anytime soon. And I'm really excited. The Columbia Street, I know that, here I am wringing my hands about money, really looking forward to pursuing the Columbia Street realignment and the project that Ben's been working on with the overlook that's going on down there. And then I guess the thing that I even have a double arrow on my pad here, the downtown plan. This is the next big deal for me, to the point where I'm making house calls. And at first my thought was I was going to go make house calls and gather support. Unfortunately, I've been making house calls and putting out a fire that shouldn't have been a fire in the first place. And those meetings have been going very well. I love the fact that people that I've been talking to are very receptive, and with the opportunity to let their guards down and see the vision, see what we're trying to accomplish. I even said it out loud, I'm fiercely protective of our downtown. It's one of our biggest assets. I don't know if you guys drove down Russell yesterday, but the street lights are up. Our cute little town it's got it going on right now. And downtown is one of our biggest jewels. It's a treasure that can be a great resource for us, providing more housing down there, a built-in crowd for businesses that will stay open until 9, maybe even more diversity in the businesses that are downtown. This is something that's the next big deal, right up there with the wastewater plant. So going to be out stumping, looking for support and finding ways to make this downtown plan everything that we hoped it would be. I guess that's it for my list. So who would like to go next?
Oh, me.
Okay.
Well, and I think it's great going right after you, 'cause my views are a juxtaposition to yours, and I think it'll create a great dialogue here through the day. Because unfortunately, we are dealing with just cascading piles of shit over the years now that just hadn't been handled. I'm talking over the decades here. You know, wastewater was put off for so long, right? And we finally are getting on that. Now the pipes are degraded and we need to get all those replaced. And so it's this, we have this dichotomy of things that should have been done and we're getting done now, but so we're trying to get caught up to the present versus looking towards the future. And of course, money is always the big concern. How do you pay for it all? So for me, well, so I also come from the viewpoint of I like Stevenson the way it is. There's a few enhancements we're going to need and whatnot, but I'm not looking for this to become a huge industrial center or anything of that nature. But at the same time, bringing up the downtown is kind of the next big thing. My concern being, let's get done what needs to be done first before we start focusing on that. But also you need to improve that to bring the money in to be able to fix it. So it's this chicken egg scenario. For me, the big things I'm looking for, is really just trying to get caught up on some of these past projects that never had the funding. And I honestly don't remember the rest of your original question. You're muted.
I wish that there was maybe there is a button on the keyboard instead of, oh, where's the mouse? Got to find the button. Got to hit the thing just right.
You can set your
space bar.
You can set your space bar.
Space bar. That's what I needed. Okay. Think big. 30 years.
Yeah.
And then work your way back. Include hurdles, or be prepared to circle back and present any hurdles that you think are going to hold back any of those. But remember that the big thing here is that if we find ourselves at a trailhead, two paths, hopefully we will have looked far enough into the future or had our head up high enough that we knew which direction to go.
Yeah, so for me, the downtown plan would be kind of that big overarching item, so to me, I would love to upgrade, tighten up, make shiny what we currently have, right? So clean up the downtown, make it more, easier to navigate, boats coming in, parking for tourists that are driving in, more opportunities for, living upstairs, business down below. I know, Scott, you kind of come to, where do I buy, just a cheap pair of socks, right? There's not so there's some amenities that we could probably still bring in, but to me, it's not necessarily about expanding. It's just tightening up what we currently have and maintaining the personality of the community. Now that also means that it's less able to be self-sustaining. You're relying on jobs elsewhere, which I know would be a concern. So I like the idea of pairing up with the schools. If we did bring in, a small industrial area, right? How do we get the students that are graduating the skill sets to be able to, there's a variety of jobs in an industrial setting, from hands-on to office work, right? And so filling those, and I think that'd be a great opportunity. And I like the idea of not necessarily pushing college, but trade. I think that's fantastic. But that's kind of my view, is just clean up what we have.
The space bar is such an amazing thing now. now, but then I don't, I'm like, is it really, am I really unmuted now? Is it really working?
Yeah.
I'm writing down notes as we go. So I'm hoping that yes, we're going to listen to everyone's thoughts. And then if you guys can keep some notes as we go along too, so that I can refine my message, or you can refine your message after you've heard everyone, but then also point out some things that you thought, that you found interesting or didn't think of or forgot. So hopefully you guys have a pad in front of you, and we can circle back and make this as productive as possible. So I'm going to go, and are you, any more, Matthew? Thank you very much for your thoughts. I appreciate that. I'm going to switch it over to staff, and I want to hear what Ben has to say.
My space bar isn't working, so it takes a second. I guess I'm thinking about it as a community more, and I want to see the community provide the services that are needed and demand services that they should demand, and that they demand in other communities and that they get in other communities. So that's all pretty bland and non-statements, but that applies to something like the fire hall. The fire hall is a necessity. We don't believe that our community will pay for that necessity. How do we get there? And so figuring out a community that can do that is something that's important to me. That's where then I kind of turn to the physical aspect of what's going on. So we can't afford it right now because we don't have enough people, because we don't have enough tax base, and we can't provide those services that people do want. So figuring out how to do infill, like downtown that you guys are talking about. My dog has opinions that she'd like to share. Figuring out infill for the residential areas that are close to downtown and currently served by the water and sewer lines. One of the foundational components I'm probably working from right now is a group called Strong Towns, and they do a series of webinars that identify how upside down things have gotten. Upside down things have gotten with how we develop, and we get on this growth pattern that you need growth to pay for the now, and you need future growth to pay for the growth that you just have. And that group is coming out of the Midwest, where they're just sprawling bigger and bigger and bigger, and not doing the infill development that we have opportunities to do here because of the geographic constraints. So providing that tax base, I guess, is something that I'm focusing on with the infill development that'll make providing the services and infrastructure easier. Infrastructure that's particularly important to me is the pedestrian environment, connections between homes and schools and services, and connections between the town and recreational opportunities. So I think you guys know that out of me by this point. Some of the hurdles to getting there that I see is that we've got a few strong paradoxes, paradoxes, who knows how to say that plurally, where much of the community believes that they're out in a rural community and they're self-reliant and they don't need services and they can do it on their own, but they can't. And that's the sense that they're self-reliant has really been built over decades of excess services being provided by Skamania County for nothing. So this would be the forest funding that they diverted after. Somebody should fact check me on this too before running away with it. But after Mount St. Helens exploded, the feds started allowing Skamania County to use the forest money for things other than police and fire, that other counties were subject to. And so they were paving people's driveways, they were plowing people's driveways, they were building pools for the community to support, and wells for each of the different communities. And all those services were provided for free and not on the backs of the people who need them. And so now we're in a position where we don't have that money, and we need to figure out how to do that. And people haven't grappled with the fact that that's how it's done in most communities. So self-reliance versus not being anywhere close to self-reliant for so long. The other issue is this paradox between the rural community that people believe that they're moving into and the need to pay for the services that are demanded by the people that move in. So the sewer system that's in disrepair, well, was in disrepair until Carl took over, right? How to pay for that. It can't be done just on the people living here. We need some sort of outside funding, and we're pursuing as much as we can in available grant fundings. But we need to be reliant, and we need to have an urban form that's more urban than it is. But that's in contradiction to what people want when they move here to a rural community. So getting over those hurdles is a big challenge. And stepping backwards to there is something that Scott kind of mentioned with the leadership development, the human development, that right where we're at right now is transitioning away from a group of leaders who were working together for a long time and set up joint goals between each other, and they didn't always like each other, but they worked toward those goals and with each other's personalities. We don't have that right now. Those people have all retired. And so we've got a bunch of individual organizations that aren't moving together. And so finding some rallying cry that'll bring us together, and then we can work out our personality issues as we go. But right now, everybody's pointing in different directions. So that leadership development between everybody is something that's going to help us deal with those paradoxes and ultimately help us provide what the community needs to provide.
Apparently the spacebar only works if the Zoom window is highlighted. So just saying spacebar while you're in a chat, spacebar on the chat. So, all right, thank you, Ben. Robert.
And again, I don't have much to add since you and Matt both covered a laundry list and Ben's got some specifics, but the way I see our job is to build a box. We don't fill the box, we just build the box. And you know, small businesses or people with ideas and concepts, and they then come in and fill the box. It's just our job is more 30,000 foot level. We're not tasked with being, you know, the man on the ground to make different decisions. I agree with Ben. I think we need a rally cry. You know, it's interesting. Both Shenandoah and Hidden Ridge, you know, sat dormant for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden, both developments have blown up, if you want to use terms for Stevenson. I think you're going to see more interest in leaving larger communities after this 2020 situation. But the way I see the world, though, is I don't see manufacturing. I don't see light industrial. I don't see that. I see that all gone from the American economy. That's my global vision, is that you're going to have more and more smaller individual type occupations. But if you look just on this Zoom call, those of us who don't work for the city, we garner income outside of either Stevenson or even Skamania County. And we bring those dollars back here and spend them here. So I think that the long-term economic push is going to be more and more people who are working in smaller and smaller environments, creating economic return from outside our community, yet living here to spend it here. So our job then is make sure that box can fit those who want to live here. And I somewhat agree a little bit with Matthew. I don't think Stevenson's going to, you know, blast off, but Shenandoah and Hidden Ridge blasted off in the last 12 months. And when I say blast off, we're talking 10 homes. you know. But I think Ben's right. We have to have the box ready for infill. That's our job, is to have those documents or codes or regulations in place so that someone who does step into a community, they're able to immediately know what they have to do and move forward with it. And do so without a whole bunch of bumps and bruises like we tend to find ourselves doing, because we're all volunteers. I mean, except, again, you know, Liana and Ben, Carl, the rest of us, we bring our time and energy, but we don't work on this 24 hours a day or even 8 hours a day for 5 days a week. That's just not what we're focused on. So things like this retreat help us grab a few ideas, put them on paper, identify the to-do list, the task items that need to be done for those agenda provisions, and then move forward. And then we can check in and make sure we're there. We all took from whatever was here before us, and we have to make it better, or we have to just make sure it still works. But I'm not sure us as a council, if our goal is to get down into the weeds. I mean, I'll flat out disagree with you on the school side. That's why there's a school board. That's why there's a superintendent. I mean, if the school board comes to us as city council and says the box needs to be built in a certain way so that they can prosper and move forward, then I agree with that. But I don't think it's our job as city council to find a way for the school system to get better or whatever it needs to do so that those who do move into the community are comfortable. I think we bite off so many things. Even at our last retreat last year, I thought our list was overwhelming to the point of it froze us. We stopped moving because we put, and I think Liana sent out that list to rate. And I was like, Jesus, I did the first 6. And after that, I was like, they're all 7. You know, I don't know why did we have all those on that list, because it's too much to digest, and it's certainly too much to focus on from let's move forward. You know, Ben's got specifics, Liana has specifics, Carl has specifics, you know, and our job, I think, is to work with those staff folks who are doing this day to day and go, what is it we need to do to help you? We got these meters installed. That's a small victory, but I think at the end of the day, it was a huge victory for us. You know, what Carl has done with the sewer treatment plant, huge victory, huge. But we do have other issues that we got to work on, you know, and that's our job. So I guess I see my 30-year plan is to make sure the box will accommodate those who want to come here. Not so much that we're Kalama, where we're radio advertising to, hey, come here, our business model is perfect for you to set up your shop here. We don't have the groundwork for it. I mean, we have very little area for industrial or light industrial. But if, you know, brew pubs want to do their thing and ship their beer out of here, or cider companies, then we got to make sure that box is available for them. But we may have tapped that market, and maybe a new market that none of us even know anything about. I don't disagree with you on broadband, although I'm a neophyte on that, so I'm not sure if that means we just have to have access so everybody can do what we're doing right now, that is communicate electronically, or we need a cooling farm so that we have more space for storage. You know, my profession is a lot of paper, and I have to be able to, typically it gets printed out in binders and boxes. I can't do that anymore in this new world. It has to be stored on something, and I need abilities to digest that faster. I've run into a problem with Wave on my side where, you know, it hubs up to Seattle, and then it hubs back down to my office in Portland as a server, and then it hubs over here. And I may have great internet access, but when I go to open a file in Outlook, it freezes me up because of all those little switching connections. So again, I'm a neophyte on that. So it's a byproduct of what we're forced to do now. There we go. That's the best I can do.
Thank you, Robert.
Scott, could I ask a clarifying question for Robert?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Which I will preface this by saying, industrial may be leaving America, but hopefully not the future Cascadia. But so just a question about your idea of the box. So not specific to the school, but just in general, high level. You know, you say we shouldn't be filling that. If the case is that we find the box is not being filled, whatever the scenario is, do you feel it should just be left there until somebody eventually comes along?
Again, I'll use a computer term just because I think it's that we need to be plug and play. The box needs to be plug and play. Are we supposed to plug? I'm not so sure we should economically do that, but if we've created the plug for it to be put into, then I think we've done our job. But I agree. I think what you just said, if there's something that this community needs and it falls on us to provide it, I think that's the box. I'm not so sure we have to plug in the software that runs that, whatever.
Sure.
I know I've totally butchered the computer analogy here, so.
But it sounds like you're okay with, you know, if we think the community needs something, we build not the infrastructure, but, you know, the box for it. But you feel that's where it should stop. We shouldn't be looking for avenues to encourage the growth in that box. It's there when it, you know, and it's ready whenever somebody comes along, but you're good leaving it. I just wanted to clarify that.
You know, maybe I'm Keynesian then in that point. And I see city council, I see our job as government, not as economic. But, you know, we leave that to and I won't use the word capitalism, but to those who want to do with it. And it can be nonprofit.
That makes sense, yeah.
For profit, but I think you leave that to the idea people. There are way smarter people than I am that can come up with an idea on how to create something. And if we've made it available, so then the platform's there for them to create off of, that's great. You know, Stevenson is small. I mean, what's our square footage? It's not that big, right? And we don't have access. And then what? So home-wise, building lots, less than 700 that would tap into our infrastructure from a city service now, you know, and our job is we're kind of stuck in the center here with the county all around us, and the county's got to provide other sources or resources as well. Yeah, I'm just not sure that we as the government are supposed to put those in place.
That's fair. I appreciate you expanding on that.
Yeah.
For an admitted tech neophyte, you did some pretty good analogies there, Robert. So I'll give you some credit on that one.
That was sheer luck.
Carl.
I don't have a space bar that's working, but I think for this meeting, you know, my opinion, as public works director, we got to focus on the infrastructure that we have. We are playing a little bit of catch up right now. I think we're definitely on the right track. We got smart meters. That was a huge goal that we obtained. The phased approach to the wastewater treatment plant. It's awesome. It's going very well. And you're right. Water's coming right up. We've got aging lines that we need to take care of. Unless it's developer driven with their dollars, you know, that's a different story. If we want to start expanding water lines, if we want to start building reservoirs, but right now, just my opinion, we need to take care of what we got. And yeah, that's, you know, I'll leave the planning and the future looking into the council members and the mayor, but that's my opinion when it comes to infrastructure and where we need to go.
Hey, Carl, I would ask you, and then this dovetails into kind of what Matt asked me is, you know, water, at least theoretically, people have said that's the gold that's coming our way. That's the oil and gas, which is killing our environment through the Permian Basin and whatnot, and fracking and whatever. But what are we in a position geographically to tap into more water where we can reserve that and become not only self-reliant, but we could actually distribute that out? Is that possible? I don't understand the geography enough here in our locale, but that would be an item I would see putting on our to-do list if that's a feasible argument. Maybe creating the infrastructure is too expensive, but it's a quick question.
The options are there. I'm not sure if it's anything we want to look into right now. Again, I'm trying to get the Hagewald well as a permanent source, just for that reason. You know, just so the city of Stevenson has plenty of water in reserve. Right now, our water system plan showed that we do. We're fine to grow for the next 20 years, no problem. And that was with the Hagewald well as an emergency backup. That was not counting it as a permanent source. We do have a small satellite water system to the north of us in my neighborhood. The state, there are, correct me if I'm wrong, Leona, but I believe there's monies available to consolidate water districts. Definitely something we can look into, but unfortunately it's, I don't know, 150, 200 feet up the hill. So a lot of infrastructure there, but you know, city of Stevenson getting involved in building more reservoirs so we can sell water. I don't know. I think that's pretty long term. I totally agree with it. I get it. It makes sense to consolidate water systems. It saves money for the users in the end. I think we're set up to do that, to be honest with you. It's just, again, money, and it's heading straight up the hill.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming it flows down towards the river, right? So we got to just catch it in the right spot where we can stick it in a reservoir somewhere.
Well, I've lived up here since bought my property in '96. I believe I'm one of 3 successful wells on the hillside, starting at the top of Loop Road all the way down into the city of Stevenson limits. I don't believe we could find a credible water source up here. We would be pumping it from what we already have. So again, that's why the conversation's huge. Where do you find that water? You know, do you do a Ronnie collector out of the Columbia and then pump it all the way up, you know, up to your highest elevation of your development? I don't know. Big question.
Yeah, Robert, in the current plan, the water system master plan that we have, there's a reservoir planned around Baker Road, I believe. So it's probably halfway up Kanaka, more or less. And that's where some people, we are getting calls, you know, hey, do you have water that you can provide us because our well's dry? But that reservoir, to put it there, it definitely would pump from our current source, and it'd be $4 million.
Cool.
Is the current estimate. Ideally, if we are to explore putting something, I would suggest putting something up higher if we're spending anything close to that. But again, we don't have the estimate for that, but there is, so we have to do this water system plans at every 10 years, Carl?
Yeah, now it's 10 years.
Yeah. So I think when we next look at it, between now and then, they do suggest doing some planning for where we would put the next reservoir to see, to get a more refined cost on that. But again, yeah, $4 million just to go halfway up the hill.
When was the last time our plan was done? What's our time frame to the next plan?
28. Ours was approved we called it the 2017 plan. By the time it was approved, it was 2018. So 2028, we'll start working on it in probably 2026.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Carl?
No, unless anybody has any more questions about infrastructure.
We're not done with infrastructure.
What's a Ronnie source?
Ronnie, it's where you basically create horizontal paths for water out of the Columbia you end up pumping water out of the Columbia, basically. And that's what the Carson PUD it's Manning County PUD is looking into.
It's in hydraulic continuity. So you're not actually drawing from the Columbia, but yeah.
Deeper discussion on that one.
Yeah.
Where does the water come
Pardon
from?
the pun.
Right, yeah.
The Columbia. Technically, I guess it's not the Columbia, but anyways, yeah, so there you go. And it's, I get, you know, City of Washougal, when I was there, was looking into that. They drilled, sorry, getting into the weeds a little bit. They did drill down near their Columbia. I believe they got high manganese, so it's really expensive to filter and provide. It would have been expensive to the end user. But cities do that because you don't have to worry about finding water. You're going to find water. It just depends on what the soil brings with it that you're going to have to treat. And that's one thing about the Haywald well that we're finding out is it is a little high in iron. By the way, we just found that out, got the results yesterday. So be discussing with our engineer how to treat that if we do need to treat it.
Thank you. Paul.
Okay, I'm going to try to use video and see if it'll work for me. The later your turn is in this, the less there is to say, I suppose. I think one of the approaches I'm taking here with looking for 30 years future is, what do I wish had happened 30 years in the past? What would make our lives better as citizens of Stevenson had the city council taken actions 30 years ago? And for critical infrastructure, I would like for those things to run essentially as a nonprofit business, where 30 years from now, we will be replacing, or the future council will be replacing whatever infrastructure we're trying to put into place now. By then, it will have aged out of existence. And that's a beautiful cup you have there, Scott. I love it. I hope that 30 years from now that they will have the money, the resources in hand to replace them with much less problems than we are having now. And the way for that to happen is for us to establish a fee structure now that will save for the future, rather than 30 years from now, the new council will say, we don't have any money and we have to replace this. Oh no, what are we going to do? I would much rather them to say, we've got this bucket of money that was set aside, built up over 30 years. We can replace it with no problem whatsoever. That's my long-term goal on critical infrastructure. Then there's the non-critical infrastructure, things like the downtown plan, public art, street light systems, that sort of thing. That I see a bit more as a pay-as-you-go sort of thing, and as an opportunity to build for the future. That perhaps things like the downtown plan, the plaza, the park plaza, that sort of thing, we may have to take on a little bit of debt now in order to invest in the future. And sure, it would be best if we didn't, of course, but we don't really have that choice. The other thing I'd like to bring up is somebody else brought up the idea of the involvement not only of schools, but of younger people. And I think anyone who looks at the audience at a typical city council meeting or county commissioners meeting or whatever, you'll see a certain age demographic in the audience. It's almost all, there's a lot of gray hair. Not that that's bad. There's a lot of wisdom to be gleaned from these people. I love it. I've got quite a bit of gray hair coming on myself. But I would love to involve more young people. If we can get people in their high school age, early 20s, maybe 30-somethings, if we can find a way to get them more involved in their future, the future of their town, I think it'll be much more likely that they'll stay. That sure, they'll go off to to college or the military or to a religious thing, but then they'll come back and they will have invested. Their ideas will have come to fruition in the town. They will see it as their town. They will own it. They will be more likely to stay. They'll be more likely to keep their kids in the schools here, and it will improve. It will just be a continuous improvement that we can ride like a wave, or they will be able to ride like a wave, because we will all be gone by then. We will have all moved on. So it's my plan to try to do now what I wish had been done 30 years ago. And so with that, I'll leave it to the next person.
Thank you very much, Paul.
You may be dead in 30 years, but I'm still here. Just saying.
I didn't say dead. I said moved on.
Annie.
You went out of order. I thought it was going to be Amy, so sorry about that. It took a minute to unmute myself. Wow, there's just so many great ideas that have been shared, and I thank you all for giving your input. And as Paul said, the later you are on this rung of contribution, the less you have to say. Well, I made some notes while everybody was talking, and I kind of put things in order, like a sequential order, in my opinion, as to how things could pan out. And so for me, I think the number one effort that needs to be made has to do with our local leadership. And I'm not just speaking of the city leadership, but the county and all of the organizations and agencies that we have too. And Robert, you made a really good point about, truly what is it that this council is truly responsible for in making certain that the residents of this city have their needs met. And I agree with you that I don't think it's up to us to get into the weeds, but to provide an overarching structure from which people, residents, businesses, whomever, can grow if that's what they choose to do. I also think that, I was with Scott when we attended the RDI leadership program, and I am too a proponent of the Tupelo project. And so because I'm a proponent of that, my question then becomes, not really a question, my statement becomes, to me, what makes the community is the relationship between all of its leaders. And so that means that maybe we do have some partnerships with these other leaders that are surrounding us, so that we can all work collectively together to make certain that the residents of the town are well-rounded in the services that it receives. So given that, my order of attention would be one, leadership, that at the helm, the people who are making decisions for its residents, whether it be city or county, I think these leaders need to be cooperative. They need to be visionary. They need to be forward-thinking, and they need to have some ability to be a risk taker, because we are at a crux, especially now economically, where we need to be thinking of new alternatives to make certain that everyone here thrives, not just survive. So beyond leadership, I think then there's a combination. We need education, housing, and successful social programs. I think all of those go hand in hand. And then we also need infrastructure, as Carl has already touched on, and I really appreciate his input on that. And then finally, we need economic recovery and jobs. And when I look at all of the things I outlined, I then look at the triangle for the Tupelo model, and it all falls under human development, which is its very first rung to making certain that a community thrives well and thrives together. I think that's about it for right now, for the sake of time, and I'm sure Amy has a lot to add too. So I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy.
I guess just to backtrack a little bit on what I said in my introduction, I really strongly believe, like, I have a lot of privilege. I was able to choose to live here in Stevenson, and it's a choice that I have continued to make for many, many years. And the reason that I chose to land here initially and to raise my family here, and now that my kids are gone, to continue to reside here, is because I think that Stevenson as many of you have already mentioned, is a really special place. And it was a special place before I came here, and it will continue to be a special place long after I am gone. And I think that it's really important that we recognize that we're stewards of that. And so when I think about my vision for what I want our community to look like in 30 years, it's really a place that continues to have the heart and soul of its people as a priority, and its connection to the river. And so my vision is to continue to protect our community from encroaching, thoughtless, willy-nilly development, because I feel like we will lose the heart of why people have continued to live here, either chosen to live here, landed to live here, been born here, whatever it is. But we are staying here for a reason, and that's because we do not look like the rest of America. And I don't want us to look like the rest of America. I don't want strip malls. I don't want stoplights. There's a lot that I don't want. And there's a lot that I do want. And what I do want is a city in good working condition. Thank you to all of the staff that has worked so hard, really since Liana came on board. And to those of us who have been working on this for, many years before Liana was on board as well. So I think having a well-run city is really important. And I would only change Annie's list in one sense, and that is that I would put infrastructure at the very top. And I would also put visioning probably pretty high also, and that I agree with Scott. We need to have a plan for where we want growth to occur. And I guess Ben really said this as well. Where we want growth to occur, in my opinion, is also in the infill. And not in sprawl, mostly because we don't have that option, but also because I really do think that's the best way to save our connection to the river and to save the heart of what we have. I don't want to look like Hood River. I don't want to look like Camas. I don't want to look like, Washougal. I want growth to be really intentional and and planned for. And it's coming whether we want it to or not. We used to have these conversations about attracting development. I don't think we have to work all that hard to attract development. I think it's coming, and it's coming because it's being squeezed in other places. And there are certainly people who will choose not to come here because we don't have certain services, but there are always workarounds. I mean, I'm one of those people who sent one of my children graduated from Stevenson High School and one did not. One graduated from Hood River. And so, there are workarounds for people who don't find what they need in our community. And to Robert's point, a lot of us do, and more of us probably will continue to be working from home. Now, whether that trend will continue over the next 30 years or not, I don't know, but certainly over the next couple of years. So I guess that's my 2 cents. And that is really to not forget about the river and our connection to the river, and to protect the heart of what we have, which is our people and this community and the connection to the outside environment. I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Amy. I purposely left Liana till the end. I'm sure that I'm interested to hear what her thoughts are. But also, Liana, at the end of your thoughts, can you go over the top 3, not even that, top revenue? How does the city make money? Ready, set, go.
Okay. So I'll start with my thoughts first, and I was sidetracked by the top revenue, so I started thinking on that. One thing I didn't mention, I think because I went so far first with explaining sort of how we got here, was part of the reasons that I wanted to work for Stevenson was because I knew it was a very at least the reputation is a very well-run city that has good connections with its neighboring agencies and does stuff. I mean, you can kind of tell it between the difference in the downtown in Stevenson versus the downtown in White Salmon. There's a little bit more of a connection and an involvement with the people that are in this community, which kind of, again, goes towards what makes Stevenson great. And I wanted to be part of that. Part of my my role as city administrator is to ensure that council priorities are moved forward and implemented in a manner that again creates that box, but also ensuring that our legal obligations are met. You know, we have to provide clean water, we have to have that infrastructure, and we have to meet those regulations. So one of my goals is to make sure that I provide tools and support to council and to staff to allow them to do their job, and to implement policy, or craft it in a way also that doesn't impede business. I know with regards to the wastewater, that's definitely where I came in, was with the wastewater challenge, and ensuring that whatever policies that we create has the least amount of negative impact on the community. I mean, there is going to be some pluses and minuses to everything that we do, but to mitigate it as best possible. And I think to Matthew's point, you know, when things were put off, we're now having to deal with it. And when we deal with it now, though, it's so that the future generations don't come into that same challenge that we have. So I think to what Paul was saying, one of the things that we're working on with this rate study that we're doing for wastewater is in conjunction trying to set up an asset management system to where we have a list of sort of where we're at, a picture of where we're at, the condition of everything, and then what it's going to cost to replace going forward, but not just a snapshot in time, but something that will maintain going forward. And so while that's specific to wastewater, the goal is to then set it out amongst the rest of the city. So have that for water, streets, and other assets that we have in the city. We have it already for our equipment replacement program, but again, just make sure that we have rates set that can meet the goals of what we set out in our plans. And where council comes into that is when we do adopt the plan that we have, like for our water system plan, it outlines what we have set as more or less priorities for water lines and replacement and everything. And it's a 10-year plan. So, you know, it kind of has a timeline for the first 10 years that we've already more or less moved around based on funding. And then it'll have, you know, another 10 years, which is kind of ambiguous of just, you know, the next 10 years. But where council comes into that is working with the project that we're starting on now is that capital improvement program, where we have those water projects, and then we have the wastewater projects, and we have the street projects, and we have all of them, and we're lining them all up to where you can see a project like Russell all come together. And so we're working in conjunction to align funding, to align the project, so we're not having to tear up the streets twice, having to inconvenience people more often than they have to be inconvenienced, but also to pool money to go farther with that project. Because when the roads tore up, we don't have to excavate that twice to then repair the water line. So that's kind of what I'm working on now. In essence, it's to continue to streamline and improve our efficiencies that we have, but then also improve transparency. So working on, I mean, there's all sorts of tools that we can have that will, you know, put more financial data on the city website. There's a product called Balancing Act where the residents can move the budget dollars around to see where they think things should be cut, or where they would want their money spent on. And in essence, where your money is spent is also shows what your priorities are. So that's kind of where the two come together, and that's where the community has, you know, you have all these public hearings for the budget, but it's really difficult for the community to understand how to actually interact when they have those public hearings. So I want to try to make it to where it's more clear and transparent what the money goes to and how it relates to the priorities council has set. So kind of also to Robert's point, when he had those, you know, the list that we currently have of 25 priorities is very daunting. And we've had some conversations recently with staff, especially as COVID hit, and then Ben's been out, and we've had all these projects coming up. We have not slowed down because of COVID, where I talk to other people like, yeah, I get time to get my records requests done or clean up things. And we've just been on the gas for so long that relooking at those priorities and narrowing down that list will help us spend the quality time that are needed on some of those priorities, and also having looking out to where when we do the wastewater project, we are planning on going to construction the end of next year, when all the funding lines up, and that will take a lot of staff time to ensure that it is done right, that we have the inspectors there to make sure that again, we know where things are going, and we can make the right decisions for that project to build it right, to then ensure it's lasting for years. And so making sure that the decisions that we make now allow for that time to again spend on that project. And so I guess that being said, I would suggest either a paring down, or more or less choosing of 3 things to work on next year, and then again refining and going on 3 key things to work on for the follow-on years. And because I feel like 3, especially the size of projects that we have, 3 is a very good number that we can work on, spend quality time on, and then also deal with the things that come up, such as COVID. I mean, as council knows, everything comes up and it changes throughout the year. So I guess in short, those are kind of my goals. And, you know, again, continue with the strong team that we have. The city does have has a very strong foundation with the staff that we have. And while our public works employees are fairly green, they are a solid crew, and they have stepped up in times where, you know, I think both Jonathan and Susan stepped into the role when Gordy was out, Mark was out, and everything had to be taken care of right now, with the water meter project, with Russell going on. And so they've stepped up to the plate and they've done an amazing job. And so I want to make sure that we continue with that. Yeah, Carl?
I need to add to that. So I want to say green on paper. You know,
Right, yeah.
these guys are very experienced people, guys and gals. So green on paper. A hiccup with COVID is getting certified. There are no certification classes right now being offered. There's a hiccup with online certification classes because of the information that's given on them is the companies that do it like to keep it their little secret of what they teach you and how they teach you. So offering an online class is, I think I haven't talked to anybody about it who puts these on, but I don't think they want to just throw that out there. So yeah, we've got a on paper a green crew, but I couldn't ask for a better crew. So, and like Liana said, Jonathan just had his 6-month review, and he's off probation, passed with flying colors. Yeah, and I explained to him, dude, you came into a storm. It's not normally like this. We were down. Gordy was gone for a little over a month, taking care of a dying father-in-law. Mark was out with a stroke since Christmas. He's back now, light duty. He's improving. And thank goodness we had Ian, Jonathan, and Susan there. And they, no questions asked, no complaints, just in the mix, swapping out meters, dealing with things that they have never even dealt with before, and came out just flying colors. So yeah, kudos to the crew. Green on paper, that is it.
Mm-hmm. So again, I just want to continue to ensure that they feel valued as employees, allow the leadership opportunities that they have, the training opportunities that they can take advantage of, and again, just to continue to keep that team strong. And hurdles. I think one of them is just mandates, unfunded mandates, and changing legislation tends to be a challenge, especially with funding and in times of budget cuts at the state level, because what that means is that it means less money for our own projects, or more competitive applications to go around to cities, and that's for loans as well as grants. As a small city, we do more or less get some points for being small and rural when we apply for grants. So we do have the ability to apply for specialized funding, but again, those funds are still being cut just as everything else, and so it is more competitive. But because we have a strong community and because we have a strong team behind it, we are able to, we have the things in place that make our applications more competitive. So like I was talking about the asset management system, the Public Works Board, and I think Department of Ecology as well are working on making that asset management system a requirement. When we did the value planning with CSI a year or so ago, that is also being taught and almost required for some programs as well for grants and loans. And so we are on board, and we are moving forward in the right direction to make sure that we can be competitive with those grants and then apply them in a manner that is best for our city to optimize everything, again, to make it as efficient as possible. And I think, again, just to reiterate, I mean, my role is to support council in the implementation of policies, and I agree with Robert too, as far as building that box, just making sure that we have the structure in place for people to come and do what they want in a place that they love. So I think one person asked, well, why didn't Situ move out to the gorge, or why was it established there? And it's because that's where they lived and they had that passion. And so that's where they started their business. Same thing. So, someone living in Stevenson, if they have a passion, they want to start their business, will then hopefully start their business here, and then start that growth here. And then, it will, and we'll have that space for them to be able to do that, to establish their business and grow their business right here, versus not having that box, that plug and play ready for them to come here and move them elsewhere. But yeah. So, and then about revenues, the question is, so general fund revenues, the water sewer funds are their own buckets, and so they're restricted as far as what they can be used for. But our main revenue sources are sales tax and property tax. That's where they all come in, and I'm kind of pulling up just a report right now to kind of see let's see what they were and sort of where it was at for the past 4 or 5 years. I mean, we also have lodging tax funds, which is a very large dollar amount, but again, those are specific towards in their use as far as what it can be used for. But our property taxes were about $450,000 for the past few years, 450 to 460. Of course, they go up by we can increase what we collect by 1% every year. And so right now, the 2020 projection, and then it also increases for new construction. So for 2020, it's projected to be 481,000, and that's in part due to those 10 new homes that are built in those outlying areas. And then sales tax in 2019, it was about 600,000, and then in 2020, I am pretty conservative with my projections. And so in 2020, I have it at 250,000. In 2018, it was 271. And in 2017, it was about 278. That 2020 is before COVID, by the way. So those projections have dropped, but I haven't refined my revised projections. So those are your main sources of funds. And a lot of that sales tax is from lodging. I'm working on trying to get more Department of Revenue information as far as what the breakout is of sector for our sales tax, but a lot of that does come, from Skamania Lodge. So it's also reflected then in our lodging tax funds. Your sales tax and your lodging tax are pretty similar as far as what they collect. And then we have just some minor utility taxes that then supplement those funds. And that's about it.
Thank you very much. So it was a last second thought on the revenue part, because the next part of the conversation is going to be, how do we move forward? And it's business 101. If you want to spend money, you have to make money. If you don't have money, you can't spend it. If you want to spend it, you need to make more. These are tried and true. This is not new. This is not new math. So it's one of those things that when you start to evaluate goals, how do you obviously the budget is the driving force on all of that. If you have plans that are bigger than your money, you have to make more money. So that can also be part of that can be a way to set some goals. Is, okay, we understand that we need to have more money. We have been fortunate enough to get grants in the past. Grants are great because there's no expectation to pay them back. Loans obviously do have to get paid back, but understanding where the money comes from and how we can enhance that money can be a big help when you start to look at projects and enhancements. So I just wanted to kind of get that bouncing around in your head. But I also wanted to take a second to, because I've been taking notes, and if you guys have been taking notes and you want to chime in again on the same topics, you heard somebody else say something that reminded you, or said, oh yeah, I should actually get a chance to chime in on that too. So I want to try to keep, if I wrote it down right, about the same order. So quick notes. So we talked about funding, where it comes from, how we can make it better. Or wait, actually we haven't really drilled down too far on how to make it better. One of the comments that I heard was, like the way the city that it is, and don't really want to be protective of development in sprawl. I 100% agree with that. It's maintaining that. When I first moved here, there's an energy that you can feel. And now I guess it's one of those things, you stop hearing the fan in the background when it's been on, but as soon as somebody turns it off, oh my gosh, that fan's been on the whole time. When I first moved into town, when I drove down Main Street, there is an energy that is palpable. You can feel it when you drive through town. And you can sense that it's taking shape in Carson. When I first drove through Carson and you go past that antique store that's never open, and there's that sign, or that place that has the 7-Up sign with the moss all over the roof. It's like, now there's a sense of energy building, and it's great to see. It's interesting to see it as it starts to grow. So that's something that I'm pretty, that I want to keep as part of our, when we think about things, preventing that sprawl. But here's like somebody else pointed out, growth is inevitable. And if we don't allow growth in our terms, then it's going to be that thing in 30 years going, oh, what happened? And it didn't just happen, it's been happening, and we had a chance to control it and didn't. So when I was on planning, I made a big stink about getting together with city council, and we finally made it happen. We got planning and city council together so that, on purpose, lots of things go through planning before they come to the city, and making sure that we are all looking in the same direction. If we're looking at a trailhead and planning is looking one direction and city's looking the other, then we haven't done our job. So making sure that we're all on the same page and controlling the growth that is inevitable. At some point, I wrote down saturation on here. If nothing changes, if we don't annex anything else, we will hit saturation. And then what? What is our demographic going to be? Do we have any chance of attracting any kind of business on top of that? So maybe not. So keeping the revenue part in mind, if property tax and sales tax are our biggest forms of revenue aside from our utilities, how do we increase that and manage growth? So it's really easy to go to the well of, well, we'll just keep building homes and we'll take the money. Yes, but at what cost? So, and does it have to be a cost? If you do it properly, then there's these concerns can be addressed. And that's the biggest fear that people have in a small town is it's always been this way. Why do you want to change it? I don't necessarily want to change anything, but growth is inevitable. And how can we manage that growth so that we can keep this cute little town and keep it solvent and keep looking to the future? Keep looking to the future. And when I met with Brian McNamara, he accused me of being a dreamer. And I said, Brian, if that's the worst you've got for me, keep it coming. But then he also said, businesses come and they're dreamers too, and then they're gone. And why do you think it's going to be any different? And Brian, that's what we're doing. We're trying to make that different. We're trying to make that change. Why do we have businesses that keep moving on? So let's find a way to increase our economic vitality, figure out what that issue is, and work on it. I agree that the downtown plan does need time, but it's one of those things that the drum I keep beating is if it comes to a decision time, we can say, oh, we've been thinking about this all along, so of course we go down this trail instead of the other one. Preserve the personality of our town. An interesting thought that just popped into my head. I was at a convention, and I was at an AARP booth, and they said, think about this: if you make your town friendly for older people that don't have the mobility that everybody else does, now you have a safe town for children, because they don't have the mobility issues, but the safety concerns are all the same. So with COVID, it's been announced, or it's been posited, that we're going to get another wave of entrepreneurs. Whether or not that's going to be brick and mortar or more stay at home, working virtual businesses, not sure, but being business friendly is something that has to be on the top of our minds at all times. How are we going to promote our businesses? Because guess what? Businesses have sales tax, and that is one of our biggest forms of revenue. So finding ways to not only encourage our businesses, but allow them to be, letting them know there is a vital piece of our economy, but then also doing whatever we can to back them up. Robert's analogy of building a box, at first I shook my head and said, you're crazy, man. But as that started to percolate, I like the analogy a lot. Build the box that provides for whatever ends up in it. So the box does include infrastructure. It does include finding ways to enhance our future. Be ready for whatever shows up. We talked about not sure what the next business was going to be, the next thing. We got a beverage industry that showed up out of nowhere, just out of nowhere. And guess what? We weren't ready. And because we weren't ready, there's friction because we've been trying to catch up. And so build a better box, I guess, is what we're trying. I like the analogy. I changed my mind. On the education, I'm in no way suggesting that the city steps up and takes a seat at the board. I'd just like to put those ideas out that the city has thoughts on our future and how we can enhance our future. And if the school knows that there's a little bit of pressure to make sure that the students that are graduating have the talents that they need to succeed in our town. So just really just wanting to make sure that that message stays consistent. I guess that's all I have on the wrap up, and then like I said, I'd like to go around the room if you guys have some additional thoughts, and then we'll start digging into the meat of the strategic plan. So as I recall, it was Matthew that went after me last time.
Hey, Scott, can we call,
No, I'm good.
can we call a 5-minute little break here? We've been going almost 2 hours.
But what do you,
I know we're only going to 11, and that's fine. I guess we can all walk away and come back. I just don't want to miss something that's important. I was just going to run downstairs.
well, you know, that's actually a good point, because I got to go let the dog out. So,
Ben's dog's been screaming to go out. So.
11:05.
Yeah, I mean, just literally 5 minutes.
Yeah, so I told Carl I had a hard out at noon, since we're not going till 3. So if you guys, and that was the invite, I hope said till noon. Yeah, and I have a feeling it will be done before then. But yeah, let's go 11:05 for return.
Okay. Oh, wait.
Karen Rutledge. Joined the meeting.
Perfect. All right, so instead of just going around the room again, does anybody want to chime in on that first go around? Is there anything that they wanted to add to their original thoughts? Ben does. Go ahead, Ben.
Well, actually, I just want Liana to add something. When we talked about the funding streams, you guys just passed a new funding stream, and that's going to take some work to figure out. Liana, can you talk about that one at all?
So you're talking about the affordable housing? Yeah, so the affordable housing tax credit will bring in, I think the original estimation might be about $30,000. I don't know that they sent it to me in an email. I think it was a piece of paper that I got. But what that pool of money will require is a separate fund to be set up, where it's only used for affordable housing measures. It can also be used for, because of the size of our city and our area, it can be used for housing credits. So rent credits, rent vouchers. And we can also, the way that we worded the ordinance, we can also partner with Skamania County or other agencies to pool the funds, to leverage the funds for more uses. And those funds can also be used to repay back bonds. So for example, if we decided to build something, an infrastructure of some sort, then those funds would be leveraged to pay back that bond. And the receipts are a sales tax credit. So of the 6.5% that goes to the state, it's a credit back to the city from that pot of money. The maximum, though, that we would be able to receive would be based off of our 2019 receipts. So, and I don't know if that is the maximum or all that we would receive. I have to do some looking in there, but what the state wanted a way to make sure that they could budget accordingly for what credit goes back to the cities for that. So that will bring in some money for affordable housing measures.
Thank you. Anybody else want to enhance their earlier go around?
Yeah, Scott, I would like to
Go ahead.
just point out that we need to be as deliberate as possible with the sales tax revenue planning, because we are at a structural disadvantage being right on the border with Oregon, that nobody's going to make a major purchase in Washington for a refrigerator or tires or that sort of thing when you can just cross the river and get it for 8% less. So if we are looking for ways to increase sales tax revenue, it's going to have to be a place-based item. Things like the lodge, for example. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I guess I have one other one as we, and that's why I asked Liana to bring up this new funding stream, is that a lot of times the role of a planner is to just be a regulator and tell people no and end up being the whipping boy for policies that you guys put in place. So I'm excited about that, the ability to do some proactive projects with things like that, and with the affordable housing money, and then with some of the projects that are identified in the downtown plan too. Really hope that you guys can prioritize some of those city project sort of things instead of just regulation.
Anybody else? Okay, so a couple of the things that I heard that will hopefully help as we start looking at our projects. We need to manage our growth, but growth is inevitable. There is this dichotomy that we find ourselves in. We are behind on our infrastructure, yet we are looking to grow, which requires infrastructure. So we also want to look to the future and enhance our town. So how do we catch up on the infrastructure that we're lacking, but then also plan for growth with additional infrastructure that is going to be needed? So one of those things that came up as we were pursuing, was it a grant to fix up the loop? And it came to light that, oh yeah, there's some water pipes in there that need to be replaced. So if that hole is going to be there anyway, oh, and by the way, we could get, someone would build a house because they have a lot that's too small for a septic. But if sewer was up there, then there's one more home that we can get on city property. So of course you're going to do that too. Well, it'll blow your hair back when you start talking about the amount of money that adds to a project, which also brings the capital improvement plan, why that is such a huge document. And I don't think that we give that document enough credence. That there's always been a water plan, there's always been a sewer plan. Now, obviously, sometimes they're not 100% followed. There's always a roads plan. I don't think anybody has ever laid all three of those on top of each other to say, yes, we do need to do this thing, but we might want to move it around a little bit so that it coincides with this other thing, so that we're not continually undoing work that we've already done. It would be a stinker if something happened that we had to dig up Russell again, that brand new asphalt, and somebody goes, oh, but don't forget we should have done that other thing too while we're at it. And that's something that we don't want to happen. And then the point of $4 million for a reservoir, what if that's not the direction the town grows? So do you build it so that it will, or try to anticipate where people want to go? So ways to spend our time and spend the resources that we have. So now we get to take a look at the strategic plan. So I'm not sure the best way to take our time or to spend our time on this, Liana. Do we go through, do you guys want to take a couple of minutes and look at, I guess let's start with the plan as it is. That was in your email with your packet that has the progress of the existing. But then as Robert pointed out, and as Liana has pointed out, and as is painfully obvious, we can't spend too much time on all 27 of them because that's not what we're here for today. It's to refine those things. So let's take a look at the list. And actually, do we have results from the survey?
I do. Yeah, there were 8 responses from the survey. I didn't pay for this, so I can't export it to Excel to do some other things with it, but I can. I am able to do some basic stats. And so if I take, if I do a rank of the averages of all of them, I'm able to get some information from it in a meaningful manner. Do you want me to share those on the screen?
Sure.
That might be the easiest way to do it.
Could you fill our public in on what you're referring to with the survey, please?
Oh, yes, sorry. So in the council packet, there was a information on how to rank the goals that we have, and as far as performance goes, and then also ways to kind of just take the top 10 looking forward. And so it's kind of what I did is I did a SurveyMonkey survey to do that grading in essence of each of our current goals. And then I did the second question was on ranking the current goals that we have, and then it added another 1, 2, and 3 for people to add. And then there were 2 comment boxes. One was to comment on what you had as the other goals that you wanted to have listed, and then the other one was just for any general comments. So that's the essence of the SurveyMonkey survey. Like I said, I can't export this data, but I could try to do screenshots. It's being shared right now, and I believe the sharing is recorded. So that and this will be put up later on the YouTube channel. I had challenges last time putting it to YouTube live, so I'll do that after the fact this time. So right now,
Liana, this is,
sorry, yes?
yeah, this is Annie. I know that you're putting it up on the YouTube channel, but I don't have access to it. So could you verbally let us know, like, maybe what the top 5 were?
Yeah, so right now, the chart that everyone is looking at is the ranking of how we performed on the previous goals. And so Russell Avenue rebuild had an average response of 4.75. So it was a ranking from 1 to 5, 1 being unsatisfactory, very unsatisfactory, and 5 being very satisfactory as far as the implementation of the goal and how we performed against it. So the first one was Russell Avenue rebuild at 4.75. The second one was the wastewater upgrades at 4.25. The third one was the improved financial software goal, which was 4.13. And then we had water system continued maintenance at 3.88. The road diet at 3.71. Downtown planning was 3.63. Aggressive conduit plan or undergrounding was 3.63. The communication plan was 3.43. The city-owned facilities right away. Oh boy, what just happened? Sorry, my screen just blacked out. 1 second. It blacked out again. I think this spot is cursed a bit, Scott, just saying.
What now?
My screens are flashing off and on, so I'll do my best.
Funny, because we can still see it.
Yes, no, it's just my screens. It's not my computer. So collaborative meetings, sorry, street-owned facilities, basically continued maintenance and improvements on our right-of-way roads and streets was 3.38. Collaborative meetings was 3.13. City property security was 2.88. Again, I can continue on the list. There's a list of 25 or 26 of them. Let's see. The rest of them were lower than 3. And I believe part of it was because we didn't do any work on them. And it included, like I said, so city property security, developing a deliberate growth strategy. The fire hall was actually 2.63, exploring industrial sites, broadband, remodeling city hall, an internship program, working with the Stevenson Downtown Association, Stevenson Business Association, and Skamania Economic Development Council to create a guide for businesses or an outside resource, an unimproved street plan, housing affordability, waterfront development, parks plan, partner with the school district on workforce education development, post office home delivery, and develop a youth leadership process. And that was
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then continuing, did anyone want to discuss that further or, okay. And then continuing on to the goals. And I debated about whether or not to add the wastewater upgrades because that's kind of a given, but I wanted it to have it on there so that council knew as far as what was on the plate. And these are ranked in order from the average of who ranked it most important, and then all the way down again, a list of 26. So wastewater upgrades had an average ranking of 3. I'll just do it in order. The downtown plan implementation was number 2. The fire hall was number 3. Water system maintenance was 4. Developing a deliberate growth strategy was ranked 5th. An aggressive conduit plan and undergrounding was 6th. Waterfront development, and then housing affordability, broadband, a communication plan, the parks plan, and I added clarification as far as the parks plan go. That's where the courthouse plaza agreement is kind of is lumped in. The city-owned facilities, right-of-way roads, streets, continued maintenance and improvements, exploring industrial sites, the unimproved street plan, Upper Russell Avenue rebuild. Again, I clarified that because it was just the Russell Avenue, but now we just have the upper section left. Collaborative meetings, partner with the school district on workforce education development, develop youth leadership process, work with the SDA, SBA, and EDC on a guide for businesses and outside resource, remodel City Hall, internship program, post office and home delivery, and city property security. And then there were the three others, other number 1, 2, and 3 were ranked towards the bottom, but again, those were self-selected or self-determined, and so they weren't available for everyone to rank. But I can, some of the comments regarding that was that several can be considered under the capital facilities planning effort currently underway. So that was just in relation to the goals as a whole. Other number 1 was move department heads and city administrator to annual contracts to be reviewed by council. Another comment was difficult to prioritize because they're all important tasks. And other number 1 was capital improvement program, which wraps up most of the items ranked below it and includes asset management. So that again was kind of goes under the first comment that was stated. And there were 2 additional comments. One was nothing, thank you. That was the shorter one. The other comment was early 2021 is scheduled to be very busy with the conclusion of the tree plan, residential capacity regulations, and First Street design bidding. Late 2021 is scheduled to be very busy with the construction on First Street and the conclusion of the wastewater treatment plant design, bidding, and start of construction. So that's just a look forward as to how to schedule things. And that was it.
Liana,
Okay,
can you scroll back up on your screen? I'm sorry, Scott, just so we can see those top, like, you know,
yeah,
3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't understand this chart. I don't see what number says why it's ranked number 1.
Mean, it's the mean, so it's the average of
Oh,
all of the responses.
We like the lowest number.
Right.
Okay.
So the highest it was ranked, which would be the minimum, was first. The lowest it was ranked was 16th. The median was 1, and then the average is 3. I went with the average,
Okay.
just because.
All right, so let's talk to staff first. Carl, what if we're going to talk about 3 projects? What are your 3 projects?
Am I unmuted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Still trying to get School Street water line going. Another important one that you mentioned was a short water line that has to do with the Loop Road improvement. When we repaved that, we went for funding last year and we didn't get it. That's on the table. And then Upper Russell as well. We need to replace the water line there prior to doing any improvements to the street. It's hard to narrow down 3. It really is. We still have, you know, getting back to taking care of the infrastructure that we have, a big portion of that is GIS. We have all the, we have partners in that. We've got all of our hydrants on GIS, and I use it almost daily. If we can get the wastewater collection system and the water system on that, it's one of the top priorities. So maybe 4.
Well, okay. I think I'm short-sighted saying give me 3. I think it's great for City Council to hear the things that are on your mind, and
yes,
that'll help us start to funnel it down a little bit. Can you elaborate on the GIS, what that means?
So basically putting all of our infrastructure on a user-friendly map. We partnered with Skamania County PUD. I was able to use their equipment, went out and marked a few sites, put it down on a, we've got a user access through the county. So, and that's how we came up with the hydrants being on there. And Ben and I started that here, it's probably been a year and a half ago. And we need to continue with it. It just comes down to staff time. That's all it comes down to. So yeah, that's high on the priority list. Those are my 3.
And so if I could jump in on this, we've also got an internship as you know, one of the goals. it seems that a GIS program to put all these into GIS, that an intern would be a good use for an intern, and that might be something maybe we should explore that in the future.
Absolutely correct. The one little hiccup with a intern, as far as taking the equipment out and marking where you're at, is you have to have, you know, the knowledge of where your valves are, where everything's at. So, but I mean, when it comes, there's obvious other tasks that come with that absolutely we could use an intern for.
And I think that the idea of an intern, obviously, because we're here to talk about a way to make this easier for staff to accommodate our wishes with the limited amount of resources that we have.
We all need a data monkey.
What's that?
We all need a data monkey.
Right, exactly. Adding a resource that doesn't cost a lot of money. Now, obviously we have to pay interns, but adding a resource is a good way to alleviate some of this pressure. So, all right, was there any other big glaring things that we need to keep in mind as far as the wishes would have been taken care of earlier?
No, those are all the glaring ones, and they're glaring to me because they're, you know, aged water lines. All those projects, except for the GIS, of course, are all getting rid of aged water lines, and that was one of our original goals.
So School Street, Loop Road, and Upper Russell are the ones that make you nervous.
Yep. Okay. Well, the three glaring ones. Keep that in mind.
Okay, understood. Okay, Ben.
Sure. I think my focus would probably be more on systems right now than infrastructure. So internal systems like the capital improvement program that we're developing. I know, you know, just like Carl can look at the system in his head and identify the projects that are glaring, we have limited ability to communicate that to you guys so that you can see it too. And so getting those systems in place, whether that's through the GIS mapping capabilities, the infrastructure cost estimates that we'll put together as part of the capital improvement program, we're working toward those things now. I know next time you guys see the transportation improvement program, Liana's supplemented that already to include maps showing what those projects are, at least where they're located, instead of just a meaningless set of numbers for you guys. So making these plans a tool for you to develop programs or improvement plans for. What that's also going to do is provide the financial tool for you to look at and tie the wishes to what's really there. So I'm excited about that as a system improvement. I know we, like Liana said, we've had the pedal to the gas for a long time. And so it's wearing on us. You guys saw our inability to keep the pedal on a lot of projects with this last one. So I know like the Del Rey neighborhood is very active in the planning for the future now. And part of that was the inability to balance all the projects that you guys had for us a couple years ago when we developed them. So some of that was the staff department head team that we had in place, and that should be improved a lot now. But we're still dealing with the distrust from our failures of that one. So slowing down some, completing some of the projects that we have lined up, and there are a lot of them, I think is important for us next year, and then getting the systems in place to develop the next set of projects. I don't know if that's helpful or too general for you, Scott.
No, I'm sure that's helpful for everyone. Thanks, Ben. Liana?
So I think continuing on what Ben was saying, putting the systems in place. So I was mentioning some tools that help to communicate some of this information. I'm working on trying to do that in-house so that we don't have to pay for the things. So for example, Carl was mentioning GIS. There's a way that it can be done faster, but we would have to pay for it if we paid a company to come out and do it. But we're trying to leverage all the resources that we can internally to maximize those partnerships and to do it in an affordable manner. And so again, those things take time, but the transition of the financial software did free up some staff time from doing excess spreadsheets, which is helpful, but I want to continue to leverage the tools that we have and to create additional tools to help communicate to council. So like Ben was saying, the TIP plan, I did a very rudimentary, here's the section of road that we're talking about, brief summary of the project, dollar amount, and the timeline. And as far as that TIP goes, we did not spend much time evaluating that this year because we knew that it was going to wrap into the entire CIP program. And so when you see the timeline and we see the dollar amounts, in that it hasn't been evaluated much. And I think what I would like to do is spend the time to get the planning right so that we can have everything ready to go when it comes time to moving projects up or down. For example, Loop Road, I think last year was thrown out as like, hey, yeah, I'm going to apply for this street grant. And then, yeah, it went on as like, oh, well, yeah, we need to do the water. And now we need to do the sewer. And so I want to make sure that we don't have that situation again, not saying that it won't ever come up, but trying to create the system and to create the process so that we become attuned to just, well, this is how we discuss a project. We look at all aspects of it, and we have a tool in place to kind of keep it all front and center and to let people know where we're at with things. So kind of like Ben was saying, as far as the Del Rey project goes, you know, I think it initially came up on the planning side of things when someone was trying to develop and it was too expensive to develop. So it's like, okay, well, here's a project that can help increase infill development if we can improve this road. And then when the project was put on our strategic plan, yes, okay, great. But and we put our strategic plan out for the community to look at, but there was never any increased involvement or increased communication with what that project meant to not only that specific section community, but also the community at large as far as what the city's doing. We now have a Facebook page that will help communicate that versus just our general, we'll find it on the city website. So, you know, we have the Facebook page to continue communicating to the public. The goal, Anders has been very good with making sure that it's updated on a regular basis and sharing from neighboring agencies pertinent information. So again, creating the system to continue to use that tool so that it remains updated and it remains relevant and it remains a way that we can communicate with the community. Not only what we're doing, but I mean, it does allow for comments back, and so we can get that feedback back when the community doesn't necessarily feel comfortable calling or emailing or reaching out to a council member or elected. So all of that being said, not only creating the systems in place, but we also, in addition to the wastewater treatment plant project that we also have a grant out that we're still waiting to hear back from, which would be $5 million to replace all of our lift stations and a section of sewer line. So that will happen as soon as we get that grant notification, which would be sometime in July. I'm waiting on some additional clarification from them, or to provide for them on funding. But that's another very large project as well that we'll have to manage. In addition to managing the CARES Act funding and what we're doing with that. So we have the CARES funding that we're providing PPE for the local businesses. We have the funding that the fire department has collected, or the PPE that they've collected. We also have staff time related to the ICS that we're going to ask for reimbursement for. We have the ability for some additional community development block grant funding related to COVID. And so I reached out to, so the city doesn't the city doesn't qualify as a whole, but we can create specific programs for people with those funds. And so I'm still kind of working on narrowing down what those funds could be used for. I reached out to Washington Gorge Action Programs and Columbia Gorge Housing Authority, Housing Corporation, to see if they could use those funds. And Washington Gorge Action Program said they could use it to help set aside housing for quarantined, because while no one's used it yet, again, this is right before I went on vacation, while no one is using it, it is expensive for them to hold open those rooms. And so that CDBG funding could additionally be leveraged in our community. I don't know if we could use it to help them pay for utilities, but again, I need to look. It didn't seem like they could use it in that scenario, but I'll look for more clarification. And again, I'm getting more and more guidance as far as what the CARES Act funding can be used for. So those are kind of the big major projects that I'm managing, and the goals is just creating the systems in place to ensure that we have smart spending and smart utilization and efficient utilization of our infrastructure projects. The wastewater project as a whole, not just the wastewater treatment plant, but the lift station grant and everything, and then CARES funding, because that has a deadline of the end of this year potentially, and then trying to figure out how it can be, it will impact next year.
Okay, so working along what seemed to be the thread through all of your comments, and I'm talking to City Council, address some shortcomings that have not been addressed yet as far as infrastructure goes. Plan for the future and be prepared to invest in infrastructure to manage our growth. Looking at our list of, I've been looking at the list of goals as you guys rank them. Admittedly, it's a very unwieldy list. I kind of like the top 5 as they are. I guess there's going to be a little bit of shifting around, but have you guys heard enough to help you evaluate these goals as they are? Not to say that any of those others are just going to fall off, because I know that there's some of these projects you guys are very passionate about, and one that we have yet to really, well, we've only kind of touched on was the housing affordability, which is once you get into that, that's a rabbit hole, and it's worthy of time. But the whole idea is to figure out what's most important that our staff can work on over the next year until we meet again. So I guess chime in. What else do you guys need to hear? Chime in on what you think about those goals as in the order that they're in, and let's try to refine this list with the time that we have left. So
one thing I would like to clarify: just because it's not in the top 5 doesn't mean that we won't be working on it. It just means when there's a conflict between a couple of them, we're going to choose the ones in the top 5 over spending time on the rest of it. So that's my clarification, is we continue to work on the rest of it. But
I like that caveat too. Amy, why don't you go first?
I'm really happy that you expanded beyond the top 3. And I'm good with the top 5. Thumbs up on that, the way they're presented and ranked here on this list. Thank you. Is there anything else you need from me?
The only thing I don't see on here, unless we call a deliberate growth strategy, is also the capital improvement plan. I know that they're not the same, and I don't see that up on the top 5 at all. Because infrastructure seemed to be a big deal to you guys as we were talking this morning. So I guess I'm stomping all over your time.
Wastewater and water system, both up there. I don't think there was a capital improvement plan. It wasn't one of the SMART goals from our last time around. That's why it's not ranked on the list.
There you go. So I guess that needs to be incorporated in there somehow.
It wasn't a goal. It was just more of a theme that was throughout. And so we can kind of work on the verbiage. And so I was going to put an agenda item on the next council meeting to kind of follow up to this, where I can kind of work with that language and threading the CIP in.
So instead of stomping all over your comments there, Amy, I'll keep my mouth shut till it's my turn. Matthew?
More or less, I'm happy with the top 5. I personally, though, would like to see maybe less of the downtown plan implementation and more with the undergrounding the conduit and working on the city-owned facilities right away. More of kind of let's fix what we currently have before we try to upgrade to the future, right? We only have so much funds and time, and if we have to split it between getting caught up to the present and the future, that takes twice as long. And so to me, I'd rather just focus on getting caught up to the present first. But more or less, I'd like the infrastructure heavy of this list on the top.
Okay, thanks. Carl, the right of way in city property and I'm trying to remember what that was. It was anything that the city owns, make sure it's tidy and looks nice. Was that kind of the gist of it?
The first go around, yeah. When we made that, I want to say I brought that up because it's important to have your house in order, right? So that's exactly what we're talking about: reservoir sites, remote sites.
And then how do you feel like that's going? So now, having Susan, the rock star, seeing her around, obviously a lot of our properties have, you can see the difference. As a project, how are we looking?
We're looking okay. As mentioned before, we were down some personnel. Unfortunately, while everything was growing wildly, we're still playing catch up. There's definitely some sidewalks that need some love, but as far as remote sites and keeping them looking good, we're doing better. There's improvement for sure, but there's more that can be made.
Great, thank you, and thank you, Matthew. Paul.
Yeah, I want to keep alive the idea of aggressively undergrounding our utilities. I don't feel like I've heard that very much today in our discussion. And I'd like to thank Carl for the idea of keeping our house in order. And I would be absolutely willing to volunteer to get out there and help with whatever's needed for the mowing and chopping and pulling weeds and so forth. And I think I could probably find some other people who'd be willing to volunteer on a regular basis for that as well.
I'll take you up on that. No, get out there right now. I mean, just start going. No, for real, Paul. If that's a thing, I'll get in touch with me.
I have access to some tools that I could supply a small army.
Paul, top 5. How do you feel about those top 5 goals?
Yeah, I feel good about that. I infrastructure heavy right now. I think it'll make up for what what didn't happen 30 years ago that I want to plan to be in place 30 years from now.
Thank you.
It's good.
Robert?
I like it.
All good with what, everything you said. Let's take that and then start assigning tasks to complete them. Because I think the top 5 are perfect.
Okay. And Annie?
Yeah, I echo everybody else. Top 5 is good.
Okay. So infrastructure heavy. I guess the big thing is, how are we going to pay for it? So I guess we've identified things that we find important, and now also part of that is going to be staff time figuring out how to pay for it. And then also, one of the things I want to keep bringing back to you guys is keep remembering what the revenue streams that are available to us. How do we enhance those? How do we make the most out of them so that we can care, not only address some of the issues that haven't been addressed in the past, but then can also fuel and fund our vision for the future. That was one of the things that I heard a lot from you guys today was vision, look ahead, be ready. So identify the important infrastructure projects now, find ways to pay for it, and then continue to work on revenue streams so that we can move forward. Liana, is this Is this a good, is it succinct enough?
I believe it is. It helps to. I think that in addition to assigning tasks to it, I think that will. It gives us. Yes. Sorry. Short answer. Succinct. Yes. One thing that I wanted to mention that just came to my mind in the TIP that's on the agenda for Thursday. In there is an overall traffic study, which would then kind of be wrapped into, I guess, more or less the deliberate growth strategy, kind of identifying what streets are in what condition and what improvements need to be made. And so that is a larger budget item. And so I think I'll be working some of the things in that staff has been talking about into those tasks and kind of that are more or less merging that capital improvement program, what we're looking forward in that into the tasks that we're trying to assign to these top 5 goals.
Yeah. And again, I don't know, I can't stress how important that the capital improvement plan is, even if it just means taking all 3 of those plans and dissecting them. And the thing I keep thinking of, I don't know how many of you guys use Outlook, but you can look at other calendars and you can look at them all 3 side by side. But then when you say merge them all together and you go, whoa, holy smokes, there's a lot going on here. So having that vision, that not even a 30,000 foot view, being able to look at those plans, especially with this moving towards infrastructure, which I think is awesome. But that is probably going to be one of the most important tools that staff can have at their disposal to move forward and to be able to show, then it creates a punch list too. So I'd like to add that to the list of important things to work on over the next year. Another thing that I think might be helpful is we had that CSI session that helped us do value planning for the treatment plant. Maybe there's another program out there that we can explore that can help us wrap our heads around how to fund infrastructure, what sort of things to look for. Just a session that we can all be, and it might not even have to be just the city. The format that we were using the other day for the treatment plant was very, very helpful, and the amount of people that were there was also very helpful. Anybody else have any other comments? Or it looks like we might finish up a little bit early, which I was a little nervous 15 minutes ago.
Amy and Annie both have their hands raised.
Go for it, Amy.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the importance of the communication because it's a little further down on the list, and it needs to be integrated into every single thing that we do. And I feel like we've stumbled on this a fair bit in the last year. You know, Del Rey has been mentioned on this phone call, but also Scott, you mentioned specifically having to, you know, play cleanup and catch up on the kind of the downtown plan and some of the things we're trying to do there. And I think all of that really kind of comes down to communication. I also want to point out that we lost with the Del Rey piece because of our poor communication, perhaps in part, we lost an opportunity for affordable housing right there in kind of the heart of our you know, town. So it has some very real ramifications. And so just a reminder to be really super proactive about communication. And it's not just about the Facebook page, although that's a great step forward, but it's actually, you know, notifications to people who live in neighborhoods that are affected by some of the work that the city is either doing or considering doing, and inviting those folks to the table. And I'm sorry, I just want to hammer home the importance of that because it is a little further down on the list. Thank you.
Well put, Amy.
Well done. Anybody else? Oh, Annie had your hand up.
Yeah, my raised hand was from a previous conversation, and so that was taken care of. But now I want to echo Amy's thoughts about communication and making certain that residents feel heard and understood, and that we are giving them the proper channels to engage with us in these projects as we go forward.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Yes, I will echo the communication, and I've been like I say, working on that myself. Being able to create that trust between the community and City Hall. I would love to continue to work on that. So yes, well put and heard. I also want to make sure, because I haven't mentioned it enough today, that we have asked staff to do a remarkable thing, lots of heavy lifting, short one manager, and there has been no priority on bringing another person in. For a city our size, we're lucky to have a planner. Also, in addition, I'm wandering a little bit, the two new hires that we have up front that aren't on the call today, between Anders and Mary, they are rock stars up there at the front desk, and I can't say enough about the way that they have responded to some of the unique challenges that we have in our town. And I also wanted to again talk about what a great job our three managers have been doing in this last year, even with, as self-admittedly maybe putting too much pressure on yourselves and expecting yourselves to do too much, and asking for a little assistance on refining your goals. And the last thing that I wanted to say is to thank all of you. I still find myself pinching myself. I can't believe that I get to help run a city. I've always said it. The beauty of a town this small is that if you've got something to say, it is as easy as getting off the couch and going out and saying it. In a small town, you get that opportunity to be heard and to see, where in larger cities you don't. So for all of you, one of the things that I heard a lot was you wanted to be part of the change and to help make a difference. And it's sessions like this that make me think that we are the group to do that. And I thank all of you for your time today on this session. And unless you guys have anything else, we're going to end up 9 minutes early.
Paint the wall, please, please, please. Paint the wall.
Hey, Paul, I understand
Yes.
that you have some tools and a small army. Why don't we paint that wall?
Well, I don't have wall painting tools, or at least not much of them, but I think that Amy, you and I should probably get together at some point and have a discussion about that and see if we can make it happen.
Let's make it happen. All right.
Can we literally just go down and paint the wall?
I don't know if I'm prepared to answer that at this time. Well, and don't forget, there's an opportunity to do something cool with it instead of it just making just a painted wall. So all of a sudden it becomes more than just mobilizing an army and getting it painted. We've got to start with how cool could it really be? So anybody else? Anybody? I'm sorry that this wasn't the format that I was anticipating. I'm glad that we got the information that we did. And if that's going to do it, I'm going to end this meeting early at 11:53. Thank you all very much for your time on this Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.